Has your pet ever saved another animal? My Doberman, he found a kitten, and he looked after her. The mother never came back, and I think he wanted to keep it safe from the cold, and from ants. When I woke up the next day, seeing the kitten with him, the scene was so sweet. I went near and my Dobie Rusty, yes, a male dog, all of a sudden seemed to size me up as to intention. I realized he had taken to her, and was acting like its mother. I approached carefully with respect to his instincts, and in a sweet voice, said, "Hey, Rusty, what do you have there, baby?" I wanted him to understand through my tone that I will not invade his space, or his adopted kitten. I sat down with him, a bit of a distance, and asked his permission to move a bit closer, and then a bit closer, watching carefully for trust level. I also looked around expecting to see a dead mother cat, but there was none. I knew he was gentle, and wouldn't harm creatures, but it was by instinct to look for the mother. Finally, as I was up close to him, I still asked permission to touch the kitten, watching again his reaction. My tone to him was so sweet. He finally allowed me to touch the kitten, and seeing that I was stroking it gently, he allowed me to lift it up. I then told him I would take it, and looked for the mama. He understood mama as mom, because my kids called me mama. Realizing I would take care of the kitten, he left to go back and be with my husband. I think he also realized he was exhausted watching over it, and that it was my turn to do so. Before I headed to the vet, who I had already talked to find the kitten the family, I went to him and told him what I was going to do. So when I went into the car with the kitten, he was alright with it. He did put in his head into the window to give it a last goodbye. When I came back from the vet, seeing the kitten was not with me, he was okay, there was no sadness, and I guess he just trusted and moved on. Rusty had this nurturing spirit. He had a very gentle, kind nature. He left me with many beautiful stories of his kindness. My family and I had rented a nice home on Flathead Lake in Montana. It came with a nice dock which we would go out on sunbathing while the kids jumped into the lake and played. My father and my stepmother were there with their little dog Mittens. This dog was fairly sheltered and never let out on her own, therefore we never expected to see her without a leash. She was always accompanied by my stepmother, who was up at the house at the time. While leaving the dock headed to the house, a dog I'd never seen before was barking madly on the beach. It was medium-sized, looked like a terrier cross and rather homely. It appeared quite anxious and repeatedly looked from me to the house next door while raising quite a ruckus. The house was surrounded by very tall, thick manicured hedges which thoroughly blocked our view of it. This went on for 5 seconds or so, and I remember thinking very clearly, this dog is acting just like Lassie on TV when she would bark to get someone to follow her. I tuned in my senses and suddenly became aware of a watery ka-plok sound coming from the house next door behind the hedges. It dawned on me this dog was telling me something was very wrong. I ran straight towards the dog, who waited till I got near him. He led me inside an opening in the hedges I was not aware of, right into the backyard of the home. As I followed him into the backyard, the watery sound got louder, and to my astonishment, my mother-in-law's dog was in a circular pool of water surrounded by a 6-inch cinder brick wall. It was about 10 feet wide and looked like an abandoned well more than a pool. Mittens was weakly swimming with her nose barely above the water, slowly and weakly dog paddling. I knelt down, grabbing her ruff, and quickly pulled her out. She was shivering and so weak she could barely shake herself of water. Otherwise she seemed fine. I quickly carried her up to the house and told the story of how this little dog came out of nowhere to communicate to someone this dog was in very dire straits. I went to find the dog, but during the week we were there never saw it again. The home next door was closed up, and I never discovered whose dog it was. It's something I will never forget. Its anxious barking and non-verbal movements clearly told me it wanted me to follow, but I wonder if I had never watched Lassie as a kid, would I have known? I believe to this day I would have. A hedgehog. Making brekkie one morning, my dog Cleo, a 4-year-old Doberman, was in the garden looking for a sunbathing spot. Couple of minutes passed and suddenly she came bounding into the kitchen and gave me a paw and that sideways confused look. I patted her on the head and went about my business. Off she bolted and seconds later was back. This time she jumped, put both paws on my chest, looked me straight in the eye, and barked. Now any dog owner who knows their dogs bark know when something's amiss. She was persistent and the toast was now cremated, so what the hell, she led me up to the corner of the garden where a slight rustling caught my attention. Cleo looked. pawed at the spot and then gave me a look like right there. You blind or what? There it was again. As I knelt down, dog clearly visible over my shoulder, paw on the back of my neck, I noticed the panic-stricken body of a small hedgehog with a rear leg clearly entangled in roots and fence. I released the hog, which without by your leave, scarpered. Cleo, I swear smug satisfaction was all over that hound's face, trotted off with a back glance of him. Where's my tennis ball? The thing that I love about that incident is that clearly my dog saw another creature in distress and reacted knowing I would do something. You see, Cleo herself was rescued by me. Our dogs are constant adopters of feral cats. Feral kittens don't last very long alone, but if the dogs find one they bring it to me to fix. Jen, our big black tomcat, weighed 60 grams, 2 ounces, when my 2 oldest Rottweilers found him in our garden. Montana picked him up and very gently placed him at my feet. He was tiny, and as cold as a steak from the refrigerator. I thought there was no hope, but tried anyway. Monty did her bit by keeping him warm. All I could find to give him a bed was an ornamental bird cage, so I put a hot water bottle in it and wrapped it in a towel. Monty curled around it to add her body heat. My assessment was that the kitten was only days old, so I was shocked when he took to eating heaps of canned tuna that afternoon. By 10 weeks he was a healthy kitten, and our male puppy Buster took him to the vet for shots and nursed him when he was scared. A few weeks back another kitten arrived, but this time walking. We haven't named him yet, but I guess he's staying. My cat Faith chased away another cat once that was chasing and trying to fight with her sister Moo Moo, who is a lover not a fighter. And I know this sounds strange, and I wasn't high or drunk, but one time I was driving out of our parking lot, and my cat Faith, Moo Moo were at the end of the driveway gathered around a huge blue jay that was just standing there with them. I stopped the car and was watching to see what was going on. I wasn't sure if the bird was injured, but I know that blue jays are very aggressive birds that hate cats, and it wasn't the norm going on there. My cat Faith went up to the blue jay, and I was kinda thinking to myself that that Faith might have tried to catch that blue jay and maybe stunned it, and if she got too close that blue jay, and he was a big blue jay, might attack her instead of the other way around. So I just watched because I was wondering if I was seeing things, but my weird cat Faith went up to that blue jay and gave it a little kiss on its beak. And now this was getting really weird, but the only thing I can think and say about it was that Faith might have regretted downing the blue jay, because after she stunned it, it didn't try to run away from her or hide. And it probably confused her, and she thought she was mistaking another creature for a critter. Well, that's what I call her. How can I put it? Catches, kills? She is quite the exterminator of the neighborhood. Or she is so smart that she thought, oh no, I killed the bluebird of happiness and I wouldn't be happy anymore. I'm so sorry, bluebird of happiness. Faith loves her happiness. She is happy all the time. Well, I don't know why the heck I didn't think about getting the camera going on my cell phone. It was right there in my face, the phone on a holder, and that would have been the greatest video ever. I guess I was in shock or something. Oh well, it was awesome, and the blue jay wasn't hurt in any way, just stunned, flew off eventually. Haven't seen from him since. I used to take my Doberman, Slyke, out for free runs in a nearby park every morning. One morning I took him out and quickly noticed he had spotted something of interest in the grass. I couldn't see what it was, and fearing it might be something he'd try to eat but shouldn't, I ran over to him. What he had found was a black and white hooded adult rat someone had clearly dumped in the park. The rat had zero survivor instinct, since instead of trying to run away, it actually stood up to sniff my eager dog. Fortunately for it, my dog liked other animals and was used to sleeping with and playing with cats and rabbits, so as far as Slyke was concerned, he had a new friend. Of course, I took the rat home and he free-ranged in the house, often sleeping on my bed right alongside the dog and myself. The rat was Slyke's pet for the next couple of years. This is Slyke with the stuffed bear he owned the whole 5 years I had him. He was as gentle with his stuffed toys as he was with his furry friends. The only animals he didn't like were squirrels. They'd sit just out of his reach and tease him. Drove him crazy. Yes. I had a collie mix who was huge. I used to say she was part Buick, but it may have been Great Pyrenees. An auto accident occurred on the highway not far from my home. It was reported that a black dog caused it. My dog Jigger started going to the same area in the overgrown field next to the road, and one night she pulled something out and left it in front of my house. It was the badly injured black dog. When I approached the dog, it weakly growled. Her jaw and her leg both had open wounds. She was feverish. I had to leave for work, so I grabbed some banana bread and gave it to her. She gobbled it down in spite of her injuries. I decided if she survived until I could be off work, I would take her to the vet. So the few days I fed her and Jigger attended to her. She turned out to have bone infection, and she became the first animal that I did treatments for osteomyelitis to. She recovered and developed into a beautiful black dog with longish black wavy hair and amber eyes. I thought her legs were short in proportion to her body, so I named her Shortbread. Big storm with thunder and lightning, not a usual event here. Our Lhasa, usually under the bed during a storm, insisted we go to the front door. Upon opening, we find a huge, wet, old, terrified golden retriever. So what are you gonna do? We brought the dog in, fed, watered it, and put a pad in the entryway for it to sleep on. Dog took up the entire entryway. It had a tag, so we figured it would be easy to locate the owners the next day. In the middle of the night, our Lhasa begins whining and trying to jump on the bed to wake us up. He did this because the stray wanted to go out to take a leak. I expect that, had Mocha not gotten us to the front door, the poor old dog might not have survived wandering around in the storm. And he certainly kept us from having a nasty mess in our entryway and embarrassing the stray. Has your pet ever saved another animal? Yes. Our pointers very insistently dragged me back to a nasty snarl of thorns and brambles several times late on a cold and wet autumn day. They were indicating there was something there, but not in their normal "we're going to eat it" kind of way. I spotted the neighbor's very small, circa 3 kilograms, white fluff bulldog was thoroughly caught in it. The neighbor was over 80 at the time, and losing both eyesight and memory. It took me a fair bit of work with loppers to get into there and free the little one, who was very cold and wet. If they'd been out there overnight, they'd have died of cold, or been eaten by a fox or wolf. Yes, me. There are many stories as well as videos showing animals saving not only members of their own species, but animals rescuing animals of an entirely different species. You can most likely enjoy seeing these by looking for them on the internet. Most common is that of one animal species saving other animal babies by nursing them along with their own babies, even cats and dogs protecting baby birds, ducklings and chicks. We have much to learn from the instinctual behavior of compassion among animals. No, and sadly the opposite. My dog's a mixed breed but a combination of hunting and herding. I have to try to keep my cats from entering their enclosure. It's part of their instinct, and I'm not confident they can be trained not to chase and kill small game. They are completely safe to humans as long as they don't feel threatened. I wanted to make sure I didn't make them out to be a danger to society. They get along very well with children, so no risk. Just hunting cats, squirrels, lizards, frogs, etc.